Chapter 20-22. In a dark room of an unnamed tower somewhere in Japan stood a man without equal among his peers. He was all for one, arguably the greatest quirk user of all time due to his quirk of the same name that allowed him to take and give quirks at will. Suddenly the building rumbled and the door to the room he was in was blasted open. From the doorway, in all his glory came forth Rikudou. "I have to say, I wasn't expecting you so soon. Tamura has barely begun healing," said all for one. Rikudou's glowing red eyes narrowed. "We both know that you're a fake, so I have to ask why the charade? You can see through this projection. Exquisite, simply exquisite. I can't wait to take your quirk away from you, though by the measure of your power that would prove quite difficult in my current state," said all for one with a smile behind his mask. Rikudou did not relent his glare. "And what makes you so certain that you will even be able to take it?" At this the villain laughed. "It seems that my mouth has spoken without my will. I apologize for this bad habit of mine, but when I see a powerful quirk I just can't help but take it." Rikudou remained silent. "Have I offended you in some way?" asked all for one curiously. "Not at all, I'm just struggling to see how a man in a state such as yours can do anything besides being a vegetable on some hospital bed. Forgive me if I don't take your supposed threat seriously," said Rikudou. "You have quite a mouth on you, boy," said all for one in reply, his previous jovial mood vanishing suddenly. "So, do you, but at least I don't pretend to be something I'm not. You are a nihilistic sociopath, all for one. Consider this my declaration of war." In a flash of blue, a sword was embedded through the projection's chest and into the monitor behind it, destroying it. "So be it," said all for one and vanished. "Did you get all that?" asked Rikudou. "Yeah, that was definitely him. I still can't believe he survived our fight all those years ago," said All Might as he came through the door looking at the chair where his nemesis's projection once stood. "We have the proof we need. We can prepare," said Rikudou as he retrieved his word. "Indeed, but still, can't we let them be children still? Even if for a little while longer," asked All Might pleadingly. Madara looked at him. "You know as well as I do that the sports festival is a double-edged sword, and with him on the loose the secret of just who is one for all successor would be solved. All for one has enough to worry about with just me in play, adding on to that the 9th user of one for all would be too much. Whatever long-term experiment he's planning that involves one for all would be instantly scrapped and Izuku killed," said Madara darkly. "You're still going on about that theory of your," asked All Might. "Something's afoot here, All Might. Why else would all for one even allow an existence that could threaten his own, if it does not involve a long-term goal? It may just be that each and every user of one for all was lucky, but I'd like to err on the side of caution," said Madara. All Might had no reply to that and just chose to accept it. Madara may be paranoid, but when dealing with the likes of all for one, that paranoia is well deserved. Meanwhile, deep underneath a mountain stood the real all for one and the doctor before 2 pods. The pods contained the healing forms of Shigaraki Tamura and Kurojairi. "How are they?" asked all for one. "Healthy, except for the burns of course. Still it's fortunate that you decided to send the second weapon along. I shudder to think what would have happened had Rikudou managed to retrieve all the knowledge in Kurojairi's mind," said the doctor. "That creature was a failure. Its power level could not reach what I desired, but it was useful as a one-shot type of weapon. I worry, though. Never before have I encountered one such as the one called Rikudou. If I didn't know better I'd say that he's the second coming of myself," said all for one. "So, he doesn't have your brother's quirk?" asked the doctor. "No, that much I could confirm," said all for one resolutely. Energy manipulation, elemental manipulation, physical enhancements, and hypnotic powers of such potency that he was able to wrench information from Kurojairi mind. What's more, his family history shows no sign that such a powerful quirk could be spawned from them, though there is one interesting thing to note," said the doctor as he rummaged through his files. His little brother, Izuku Midoriya, is quirkless." "Are you certain?" asked all for one. "Oh, yes, very. I examined the boy myself, though from recent reports it seems that he has entered the UA school's hero course and Kurojairi has seen him among the crows of students," said the doctor. All for one leaned back and grinned. "I see, so he's the one. No matter, we'll see the measure of his power on the sports festival in a few weeks. Until then, I'll have my agents intensify the search for the one known as Overhaul. // The day after the USJ attack was a clusterfuck of epic proportions. I should have expected it, really, but the fact of the matter is that the difference in power between myself and the rest of the world is too vast to be overcome with mere imagination. My ability to tear apart the USJ and to produce a defense against such powerful attacks is far beyond anyone in this world. Of course, the media descended upon the site of the battle as soon as it had ended, and how could they not? It's not like I was subtle by any definition of the word. It didn't help that Mizu decided to leak the footage of my encounter with the League of Villains to the public. I admit that I was impressive in my acts during the battle, but I would have liked to have at least some of my techniques unknown. Though, that's not strictly true, they still don't know anything about plasma release and would release. I had to give a speech on the villain attack, or so the Might Tower Public Relations Department manager told me. In these past few months that place has become like my very own agency. It helped that over the last 6 years all Might has done there was to do the essential paperwork. After all, it's not like the employees there know that their boss has one foot in the grave already. Still, there is much to consider. My little chat with All for One is one of them. Why that man allowed himself to be discovered is a mystery, and it wasn't like we had hard evidence of his involvement in the USJ attack. The Nomu were both utterly annihilated, one admittedly by its own doing, and the knowledge I pulled from Kurogiri's mind is far from complete. All I could extract, besides some basic information about himself and Shigaraki, were some coordinates which have thus far proven to be dead ends, except one that is. It was a curious-looking bar that seemed to have functioned as a sort of main base for the villains. It had obviously been abandoned, but that didn't really matter. It takes time to establish a hideout, time that might be better used elsewhere doing other things. If nothing else, then my actions have served to delay the enemy. It's barely been a day and I'm already exhausted. This shadow war is not an easy one to wage, especially since I'm up against the Emperor of Shadows. I need to get on his tail and quickly, but first, a little chat with my winged friend. Hawks, your help is needed. // Shoyuta Aizawa sighed deeply as he entered his class, 2 days after the USJ attack. As soon as he entered the class said their usual greetings, but even a blind man could see the anxiety and uncertainty in them, and most especially their somewhat frayed relationship with Izuku Midoriya. First things first, I think it's time we talk about what happened at the USJ, said Aizawa. None spoke a word, but there were clearly some looks shared between his students. Ask any question you like, and I'll answer it to the best of my abilities. Sensei, just who was that guy at the USJ? I mean, I know he's Midoriya's brother and All Might's heir, but there's nothing else about him, asked Zero. That's a good question, and one more suited to Midoriya than me, said Aizawa. We asked, but he won't tell us, said Kaminari. Aizawa looked at Izuku, who was doing his best to become as small as possible. Aizawa sighed. Well, I can't blame him for that, said Aizawa. That had the whole class's attention back on him. Madara Midoriya is a difficult person to understand. I doubt anyone truly does, and few are even close enough to gaining a complete picture on that man. He is many things, a scientist, a doctor, an engineer, and a warrior without peer, but I would hesitate to call him a hero, said Aizawa. This brought about a look of shock to the faces of the students. They couldn't understand, couldn't equate the feelings they held when they saw Rikudou stand in their defense with someone who their teacher would hesitate to call a hero. But sensei, he protected us, began Kirishima, but he was cut off by Aizawa. He did those things out of duty, not out of desire to save people. The only one I've seen him care for is his brother, and to a lesser extent All Might. This cut short any replies from the class. Then why did he become a pro-hero? Asked Todoroki neutrally. To use his power freely, said Izuku. All eyes fell on him, even Aizawa's. Izuku looked up and met his teacher's gaze. Are we really telling them that? Asked Izuku. Aizawa knew what he was referring to. An altered cover story that Madara came up with in order to explain All Might's ever-decreasing presence on the world stage and induce a state of fear into whomever hears it. Fear that was supposed to either motivate or eliminate those who are useless from the battlefield, thus increasing the number of competent and mentally prepared future heroes. Tell us what? What are you bastards hiding? Asked Katsuki angrily. All Might's retiring, was Aizawa's short reply. Whatever response Katsuki was preparing was instantly dismissed as he sat back down in his chair, eyes wide with disbelief. Not that he was alone. What? Asked Kirishima softly looking at Izuku. Izuku nodded grimly, it's true. All Might's been slowly losing his quirk due to an injury he sustained against a villain 6 years ago. Since then his time doing hero work is limited, and recently it has declined sharply. This was the reason All Might wasn't there at the USJ, and the reason why he decided to teach at UA. His time as the #1 hero is almost over, and he hopes to find and train the next symbol from this generation, said Aizawa. But he has Rikudou, right? Why does he need us? Asked Kirishima, shocked at what he heard. Nissan isn't a symbol. At best he's a pillar, a light to guide society through turmoil, but he can't do what All Might did. He just can't, said Izuku. The board might not like me to tell you this, but you need to know, began Aizawa. As of 2 days ago we are at war with a terrifying enemy, one that could shatter the very foundations of our society. Their attack at the USJ was meant to remove All Might in order to isolate Rikudou and use his failings as a symbol and as the eventual #1 hero as the catalyst that leads to the downfall of the hero system. Now that their original plan is foiled, we don't know how they will react. Oh man, what are we to do? We're not even a week into the school year and we're sent out to fight a war. I haven't even touched a boob, screamed Mineta, only to be slapped by Tsuyu's tongue. Nobody is making you fight in a war, you're just students after all. But you need to know these things. The sports festival is coming up in a couple of weeks and it will be watched by all, heroes, civilians and villains. What you will show there will be known by all, removing the advantage of anonymity, but it will also open the doors for new opportunities to learn and grow. What path you take is up to you, but be warned, you may have encountered villains and know the cold truth of our society, but the other students do not. I would like to keep it that way. In many ways they will be your biggest obstacles as they will treat this sports festival like a game. Class 1A is in the spotlight of the world. Will you rise to the occasion? Said Aizawa. Heck yeah, was the overwhelming reply. Aizawa smiled under his scarf. He got the kids all hyped up, the rest was up to them. // I was back at UA 2 days after the attack at the USJ. The reason for this was simple. Nizu decided to hold a meeting in order to compile all of our findings on this so-called League of Villains and to brief his own staff on the dangers we face. Nizu, All Might, Aizawa, Vlad, Midnight and I were sitting at a table in one of UA's conference rooms listening to Tsukachi giving the rundown of the investigation so far. In the aftermath of the USJ attack we have captured 57 villains as a result of Rikudou's actions and retrieved another 15 bodies belonging to villains, however we can't seem to find anything on either Shigaraki or Kurogiri in our database. It's possible that they were using fake names, or they weren't registered as citizens, said Tsukachi. As expected, considering the numerous parties at play here, I said. Indeed, All Might, can you identify who is Shigaraki's benefactor? Asked Nizu. All Might frowned. Earlier today, Rikudou and I were investigating one of the locations that Rikudou retrieved from Kurogiri's mind. There we found someone waiting for us. All for one, I cut in, stopping All Might's monologue. The atmosphere in the room was heavy. Yes, we discovered All for one, or rather his projection. The reason why he decided to support this man-child that is Shigaraki is still unknown to us, said All Might. I hummed. Unknown, yes, but not undiscoverable. I believe that All for one may be training Shigaraki to eventually replace him, I said. There was shock through the room. Young Madara, you can't possibly believe that, said All Might, scandalized. It's not a matter of belief, All Might, but rather one of logical deduction. It is clear that Shigaraki does not have the resources or the capabilities to organize such an assault without outside help. Furthermore, the creation of a creature like the Nomu I battled requires an in-depth understanding of quirks and their interactions with the body and particularly the link between the quirk factor and chakra, I said coldly. The other teachers felt dread. So, what you're saying is that someone else discovered how to use chakra? Asked Vlad. No, nothing as such, however the power the second creature displayed to be able to almost completely destroy Rho AIAs is something special. What I sensed from it was similar to what I feel when I use my gates, though this being said, whatever device or quirk was used to access that power is obviously imperfect and dangerous, I said. That is worrying. To be able to boost one's quirk that much is something that cannot be allowed to exist in the hands of villains, said Nizu. Indeed, but I do not believe that it is complete or safe to use for that matter. It required outside stabilization and even then the power it outputted is far below what I can attain if I open a mere 4 gates. Whomever is behind this and working in collusion with All for One to create these creatures is clearly fixated on quirks and quirks alone. That kind of mentality serves us well since it will make them overlook the possibility that chakra can be used by itself and not in a quirk, I said. You might be right about that, but we only have you and your brother as chakra users while the enemy is capable of creating entire armies of these creatures, said Vlad. I doubt it. This was a test, a prototype. All for One is arrogant enough to think that using such destructive methods to boost a Nomu's power is beneath him. That man would not want to waste any of his precious quirks, said All Might. That may be true, but we are entering the realm of wild speculation here. It may put us off balance if we continue this train of thought, something that may play directly into All for One's hand. We should focus on more pressing matters such as the upcoming sports festival, I said. My kids are ready, but I had to use one of your contingencies on them, Madara, said Aizawa. I raised an eyebrow and he continued. I told the kids that All Might's retiring. What? Are you out of your mind, Aizawa? Yelled Vlad. If you want to coddle them, do it with your own class. My kids already know what the real world means, and if All for One is truly back in action, we can't let them go out unprepared. The sports festival was always a weak point in our students' future and one they must learn to overcome, said Aizawa. I see. Well then I believe we are done here, I said standing up. Call me if you need anything. Can we count on you for the festival? Asked Mizu. Of course, I replied. I exited the room with Tsukachi following me. I had 2 weeks before the trail runs cold and the sports festival begins. There was smoke in the room as 2 people dragged another inside and shut the door, barricading it from the inside. Shit, what do we do, man? Our quirks are useless against that guy. Not even the boss was able to take him down. Well, I guess that it's true what they said about him, said the second man. Huh? Asked the first. I remember the boss saying that even the big wigs in the government are bowing to him and boss was willing to cut a deal. And betray him. Is he crazy? Asked the first one scandalized. This earned him a smack over the head. Look around, you idiot. This isn't someone we can fight off. Even All Might wouldn't have dared come into our hideout without a group to back him up, said the second. Suddenly the noise outside stopped and the 2 held their breath, hoping to not be detected. They could hear the muted thud of boots getting closer, and from the tiny slit at the bottom of the door they could see that their assailant stopped in front of the door. Their hearts beat faster as they covered their mouths to prevent their breaths from being heard. After what seemed like an eternity, the entity outside left and the 2 men could breathe again, only for the door to be suddenly blasted off its hinges and made to crumple against the far wall of the room. So this is where you had hidden, an admirable action even if it was foolish, came a voice from the doorway. There standing in the doorway stood Rikudou, his once pristine armor now stained with soot and blood. Behind him was a hellish sight as buildings burned and bodies laid on the ground with blood pooling around them. The 2 men drew the third behind them and stood on trembling legs to confront him. Rikudou grinned, his blood-red Sharingan glowing in the light of the fires behind him, giving him a most terrifying visage. Loyal to the very end, aren't you? A pity that I have to make you break your loyalty. Now, I have 2 options for you. You either continue standing there and die, or you cooperate and give me all the things I want to know and I will let you live out the rest of your miserable lives in prison, said Rikudou. The 2 men grew angered at his words and rose their heads to meet the challenge head-on. Unfortunately, they had forgotten about the golden rule when engaging Rikudou. Never look in his eyes. Rikudou grinned as he felt the 2 fall under his genjutsu. From there it was an easy task of rummaging through their memories for anything useful. A few seconds later he disengaged the genjutsu and allowed the 2 to take a step back in fear. Oh, how gracious of you to offer this knowledge for free. For this service I will grant you a quick death, said Rikudou. A second his left hand was covered in lightning that sparked to the sound of 1,000 birds. Chidori. In the next instance the chest of the first villain was pierced and his heart destroyed. The second didn't fare any better as his head was sliced off with a swing of a lightning-enhanced blade. Withdrawing his hand from the cooling corpse of the now dead villain, Rikudou stealthed his sword and picked up the unconscious boss. After receiving confirmation from his shadow clones that any and all evidence was removed and stored, Rikudou disappeared in a body flicker and repapered at the entrance of the cave where the villain base was located. Folding his hand in a hand seal, Rikudou spoke. Fuinjutsu Kai. Inside the cave, on an open ceiling scroll, a Fuinjutsu circle activated and released a stored plasma-style unstable Rinnegan. The small ball of white light detonated milliseconds after its containment field fell, and the resulting explosion erased all trace of the former villain hideout and caused a collapse of the cave, forever sealing whatever evidence was not vaporized under hundreds of tons of rock. No one would learn of this massacre and all was as it should be. // It took me a week and a half before I managed to get a lead on just what the League of Villains was doing, though that's not strictly true. I discovered that the League had ties with an underground broker called Jiren, real name Kajiro Okuta. He was a small-time villain that dealt with illegal arms and technology trafficking. He was probably one of All for One's former roster of allies, one of the outer circle that was offered the chance to go solo after All for One's supposed death. This being said, that guy was craftier than I gave him credit for. Many of the leads I discovered turned out to be dead ends, with the people that knew how to find this Jiren being found either dead or catatonic, their minds destroyed. Somehow my ability to read the minds of others was leaked. It was expected, after all I used it on Kurojiri during the USJ. Nowadays Jiren seemed to be doing his business remotely, using expendable muscle as his delivery boys. A risky endeavor all things considered, but one that was necessary to preserve his life and freedom. After my latest raid on an underground safe house for villains, I managed to discover the League's next target, the hero killer Stain. It seemed like Shigaraki wanted to recruit Stain. A foolish and ultimately useless endeavor. Stain was widely known in the underground as being a solo player. After all, he had hundreds if not thousands of fans in many a young villain that thought themselves wronged by society. One with ideals such as Stain was like a beacon to all those that believed as such, and he was unlikely to bow to the whims of a man-child. My task was now clear. Find Stain and take him into custody. As a secondary objective, I should work on a smear campaign against Stain or a way to fracture whatever link he had with the League in the media's eyes should I fail in capturing Stain quietly. There was much to do, and with the sports festival fast approaching, not much time to do it in. I leaned back in my chair as I turned around to look out of the window. My office was at the top of Might Tower, a giant skyscraper in the middle of Roppongi, Tokyo. This truly was my agency nowadays. After my battle with the League at the USJ and the discovery that All for One was still alive and kicking, All Might decide to hand me the keys to his agency, literally and in public. There was a giant media circus, as I remember quite clearly. Not that I remember much from when the blonde oaf actually dropped this on me, I was too tired and shocked to even be able to respond. Still, it freed All Might from his obligation to the agency, and it gave me the opening I needed to build up my influence even more. Honestly, up until now I was some amalgamation of a sidekick and secretary for All Might, and now I have to take over his role completely. What a pain. A good thing that came out of it is the fact that I'm now invited to the UA Sports Festival as not only a UA alumnus but also as a pro hero in charge of an agency. I don't think that they expect me to take an intern, but if someone happens to catch my eye, I won't say no. This being said, I won't be taking Izuku as an intern. He needs to learn how to deal with his own problems and not expect me to bail him out every time. Furthermore, I don't want Izuku to live under my thumb and be unable to escape the shadow I cast. I was easily able to escape All Might's shadow, but it still haunts me. Rikudou is widely known as All Might's heir, that is true, but there was a time when I was known only as that. The USJ incident may have gone some way towards changing this perception, but it still needs a lot of work. I heard a knock on the door. Enter, I called out. The door opened and in came Shiro Nobuchi. He was a young man that graduated from UA's management course in the same year as I. He was my secretary. I hired him once I discovered that the previous secretary was a spy for All for One. Of course, I made sure to dispose of that man. Sir, Nightai and Gran Torino are here to see you, as well as a third-year UA student named Togata Mirio. He says that he is Nightai's intern, said Shiro. I see, send them in Shiro and initialize a beta-level quarantine around this level, I said. Yes sir, was the swift reply. I returned to watching the streets bellow as my secretary left the room. I did not need to wait for very long as my three visitors entered the room. They stopped a few feet away from where I was. Madara, we need to talk, said Nightai. I sighed and turned towards them and stood up. Indeed we do, I said. As I passed my desk I let loose a pulse of chakra in the ceiling array embedded in the floor. From there a blue ring spun into existence as the seal took effect, darkening the room as it spread over the windows. This action of mine startled them. Don't worry, it's just insurance against any spies that might be lurking around, I said. There are spies here? Asked Gran Torino, bewildered. I chuckled. It would be surprising indeed. After all, this very tower was for the better part of a decade the central operational command against the forces of All for One back when All Might was in his prime. Yes, it surprised me as well, but given that All Might used to spend so little time here over the past 6 years, it's not that surprising to see that some moles have gotten in. I eradicated most of them and the rest I keep under strict mind control to feed false information back to their masters, I said. I looked over them. Gran Torino's face was grim and understanding and Nightai's was blank. Mirio's, though, spoke of a different emotion. You don't approve? I asked him. His smile became strained. I can't really say I do, but Sir trusts you and so will I. Oh, how silly of me, I haven't introduced myself. I'm Mirio Togata, third-year UA student, said Mirio as he thrust his arm forward for a handshake. I won't be uncouth with a kid that did no wrong and whose only guilt was associating with a man I was in a disagreement with. I returned the gesture. Madara Midoriya, pro hero Rikudou and head of Might Tower Agency, I said succinctly. Ha, you're really cool. Let's fight someday, said Mirio with a grin. I remained impassive for a few moments as I studied him. Sweat was beginning to form along his brow, a clear sign that he was beginning to feel uncomfortable. Please go outside and find Shironabuji. He will direct you to one of our training grounds. You are ready for a battle now, correct? I asked. This seemed to startle him, but he took it in stride and quickly left the room. Now that the baggage is gone, shall we begin, I said. Have you found anything on the League's actions? Asked Gran Torino, getting straight to the point. Some, though their objective is elusive. We have time though, so let's talk about your student, Night Eye, I said. What about him? He asked, seemingly indifferent. You brought him here in the hopes of convincing me that Izuku was the wrong choice for One for All. Don't deny it, Night Eye, your motives were quite transparent, I said, frowning. Then are you going to reject him from the start without even getting to know him? Asked Night Eye, filled with righteous anger for his student. Strange as it may sound, no. That's why I'm going to fight him after we're done here, to test his resolve. I will give him a chance, Night Eye, something that you wouldn't do were you in my shoes and Izuku in Mirio's, I said. Enough. We haven't come here to bicker like children. All for One is yet again loose in the world and we have to stop him, said Gran Torino, slamming his cane in the ground. I remained silent as I held Night Eye's gaze and he held mine. Not looking away, I waved my hand and numerous holographic screens appeared between us. Very well. So far I've been able to identify a person going by the name of Jiren as the League's primary broker. Unfortunately, my ability to read minds was revealed to the villains at USJ and Jiren has gone into hiding. What little of his network he managed to keep under his control once I began going after him seems to be somewhat disorganized. I did manage to find something about what the League wants, and that is a meeting with Stain. The hero killer. Why would they even want to collaborate? Asked Night Eye, surprised. While I was rummaging through the one called Kurogiri's mind, I discovered that Shigaraki thinks himself a revolutionary of sort. His dialogue though sounds more like a child's tantrum, so it's doubtful that he would be able to draw people to this supposed ideal of his. That's where Stain comes in. He can provide the ideological basis, and so long as he works under Shigaraki, villains will flock to the League, I said, exposing my predictions. That's highly doubtful. Stain wouldn't lower himself to work for a man-child, said Night Eye. Indeed, but he doesn't really need to work for them now, does he? After all, a martyr is sometimes as good as, if not more so than, an ideological leader. So long as he falls and the general public believes that he was working for the League, they will profit. Sometimes I forget how smart you are. You got any plans to stop that? Asked Gran Torino. Several, but nothing concrete. My best option is to face the hero killer in public and tear his ideals to shreds, though that comes with its own set of problems, I said. This problem was multi-faced to the extreme, and many courses of action would result in a catch-22 for the hero side, boosting the villain's position irrespective of their status as winners or losers. Such matters were delicate and could not be solved by simply throwing powerful heroes at the problem. The fact that I was capable of dealing with these matters made me so much more valuable than the rest of the top-tier heroes. I see. So, what do you want from us? You called us here after all, said Night Eye. Support, if you are able to spare any. I know we may not see eye to eye on many things, Night Eye, but I do not wish for this world to fall into chaos. Whatever machinations All for One has placed in motion are well hidden and impossible to determine. This League of Villains is the closest we've gotten to his operations since his fight with All Might, if he still runs them like Might Tower's records show, I said. I don't know if I'll be able to help you much, but you have my support in this endeavor. Should I find anything noteworthy, I'll let you know, said Night Eye. He then rose from his chair and left without saying another word. I doubt that our relations will be anything but frigid. You're playing a dangerous game, kid, said Gran Torino. I directed my attention at the old man. Lying to the public, hiding information from the hero database, and even going as far as to kill in cold blood, he shook his head. I worry about what our world will end up becoming. So do I, but what I do is necessary. The system as it is now is corrupt and bloated, and as much as it pains me to say, I can't fix it. All I can do is win this war with All for 1 inch. So you say. I pray that you will not find the price of whining too costly to bear. After this festival is over, send the kid my way. I'll make sure he's not slaking off his training, said Gran Torino as he too prepared to leave. I said nothing as I watched him go. I hope you're right, old man, but I fear this war may take something from all of us, regardless of my actions. After all, there are few prices I wouldn't be willing to pay to ensure victory. I know that his words should have instilled some sort of fear or dread into my heart, but I feel nothing. Maybe this is the price I pay for my power. To stand so far above the rest that their woes no longer touch or reach you. What a truly terrifying existence that is for those below, and what a boring existence that would be for the one above. // I left the room soon after and headed for the training room I know to be pending use. I made sure to change into a more suitable outfit than the semi-formal one I usually wore when I was conducting business at Might Tower. The doors opened automatically in front of me as I entered the reinforced room that was used for minor combat training. This room was perfectly suited for those that needed to improve their hand-to-hand combat abilities, but it was quite unsuited for someone like me to go all out. It may sound arrogant, but I don't think I'll need my full power to deal with Mirio. He may be good, but he's still human. He has human reflexes and reaction times, something that I have far surpassed with my usage of chakra. Oh, hi, I was just getting ready to start, said Mirio. I could see that he was just finishing up a set of stretches. Did you wait long? I asked. Nor really. Honestly, I thought that your meeting with Sir would take longer, said Mirio. Well, then let's begin. First one to be knocked out or unable to continue loses. I asked. He nodded and I made a sign. A few seconds later the horn blared and the match was on. I did not move and instead focused my chakra around me like a cloak. It was a new technique that I created to detect objects around me in a 4-meter radius. I could go further, but then my combat ability is impaired due to sensory overload. Mirio made the first move by undressing. His clothes apparently fell through his body and unwittingly, I activated my Sharingan. With the amount of data the Sharingan could give me, I could quite clearly see that Mirio's quirk is some sort of knockoff Kamui. In the hands of a knowledgeable and trained fighter, the phase-shifting ability of the Kamui is nigh unrivaled. After all, Tobi was able to keep up with the combined power of Kakashi, Guy, and KCM Naruto in an almost pure taijutsu battle using only this aspect of Kamui, and I doubt that Mirio has the same weakness as Kamui. Suddenly my senses blared and I reacted. From behind me and out of the ground popped out a naked Mirio, his fist already chambered and aiming towards me. My Sharingan could see the portions of his body that were still intangible, and the battle precognition granted to me by my eyes made it so I knew what I had to do. My chakra flexed and I was off in a fraction of a second into a flash step. As I came out of it, I could see Mirio's shocked face as he tried to expand his permeability. It was useless against my speed, even without the lightning chakra armor. My fist found his gut and Mirio was launched into a wall with enough force to crack the wall and make him puke out his lunch. I stood there as I watched him passively as he tried to get up. I have to say, I'm impressed, I said. Mirio lifted his head to look at me. I could see the pain in his eyes. You made me activate my Sharingan, something only All Might has previously done, I said, bringing a hand to gesture to my blood-red eyes. I smiled. Your quirk, is it automatic or do you need to manually control which parts of your body you turn intangible? I asked. The second, he said as he struggled up. He managed to stand by bracing himself against the wall. Then you are even more impressive. Against a normal opponent you would have won quite easily. Unfortunately for you, I possess a form of battle precognition. Tell me, can you still fight? I'd like to see the measure of your martial prowess, I said. He steadied himself before nodding and charging towards me. I couldn't help it, I grinned. We met in the middle of the room, just like last time. This time, though, we were taking each other seriously. I have to say that the more I fought, the more impressive Mirio became in my eyes. He is determined to prove himself and his fighting style made blocking quite redundant. My attacks were useless as well, though to be frank, I was enjoying this match so I didn't use chakra to enhance myself beyond what the Sharingan provided me. After close to half an hour of continuous battle, Mirio disengaged. You're holding back, he noted. I am. I apologize for the disrespect, but this battle with you is the first fight in a long while that I could actually enjoy, I said. Mirio looked stunned for a moment and then grinned and laughed. As soon as he did that, he collapsed on the ground. Man, you're intense. I haven't fought this hard since the beginning of my training with Sir, and you haven't even broken a sweat. He spoke the truth. I was not tired and the chakra circulating inside of me kept me at an optimal temperature. On the other hand, Mirio was an exhausted mess. After your sport festival, consider my offer for an internship, I said. Mirio's head shot up and he looked at me with wide eyes. I smiled at him. I could see some deficiencies in your fighting style that I would like to correct. You are, after all, one of the few people that I could say I have had a hard fight against. It would not do to have you at anything other than peak performance, I said. Began Mirio, but I stopped him. You don't need to decide now. Take some time and recover. I'll be sending you an offer regardless after the sport festival, I said. // So, what did you think about this, sir? Asked Mirio after he and Night Eye entered their waiting car. Night Eye was quiet. He could not believe that the one he had trained for more than a year fell to a single attack by Madara. Was he right? Was Madara right in saying that he made a mistake with choosing Mirio? Mirio, do you want this? Asked Night Eye. Mirio frowned. I do, I mean even you can't defeat me so easily. There's a lot I could learn from him, said Mirio. That you can. Madara is one of the greatest combatants of this generation and he is powerful enough to beat All Might in a fair fight, said Gran Torino. Mirio believed him. Just this small bout with Madara showed him the difference between them. Learning from someone as great as Madara, the legendary pro hero Rikudou himself, was a great honor. I'll accept his offer, said Miro. Night Eye leaned back in the car seat, uncertainty plaguing his mind. Rikudou was a truly terrifying man and against him even the nation's top heroes were as good as quirkless. Today was the day of the UA Sports Festival. Normally this day would be celebrated by the families of those that take part in it. This didn't happen in my family. Oh sure, I wished Izuku good luck, but I don't really think that he'll need it. Chakra is the ultimate tool of war in this world and Izuku is a sage on top of it. Even if he can only bring out 15% of One for All's true power, that is still more than enough to deal with most of his classmates. I must underline the most aspect of this statement. Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki. They will be Izuku's challenge. I'm sure that Izuku can deal with Katsuki easily, if he allows himself to let go of their emotional connection. In Todoroki's case, things are a bit different. If Izuku learns of his situation and the mental block that prevents him from using his fire, then, who the fuck do I think I'm kidding? Izuku won't let this rest, not until he's saved him. I won't stop him. It's not my place to intervene in what Izuku's doing, but if Endeavor just so happens to lay off his son for a little bit, no one would be suspecting me. Endeavor is akin to a mad dog and if he can't be trained and leashed, then he's better off dead. Sir, the festival is staring, came the voice of my secretary. Ahem. I'm off then. Please see to it that the analysis department finishes their analysis on Stain's movement patterns today. Mark it as top priority if you have to, I said. Of course, sir. I turned and walked to the open window and I was off, flying towards UA. The trip was short. The distance between Might Tower and UA isn't that great and I was flying at just under the speed of sound. It wouldn't do to get complaints from the people below about the sonic booms that I produce when flying at full speed. I came down to land at the entrance to the stadium. They didn't have to verify my identity, not when the entire stadium is under a Fuinjutsu barrier of my own design. It won't stop an intruder, but it will detect them a lot better than other safety equipment. After that it was a straight shot to the booth that I will be staying alongside the UA faculty and top pro heroes. As soon as I arrived the event started with Present Mix's loud voice blaring out of the speakers. It amused me to see that Aizawa had somehow been roped into attending. Blackmail? Probably, though I struggle to see why would Aizawa even allow such blackmail to exist in the first place. On second thought, it may just be that Mike has hidden it well and I know that Aizawa cares about him as a friend, so torture or counter-blackmail is off the table. My thoughts are getting too dark, aren't they? Anyways, back to the event. It started with the usual slow walk of the students from their respective gates. Of course, 1A got the most attention, after all they did survive a villain attack, even if all they did was hide inside a barrier powered by Izuku's chakra. Come to think of it, what has Izuku been doing for the past few weeks? I was at Might Tower almost all the time and I didn't get the chance to speak with him in quite some time, though by the looks of things he is determined to win this. For the athlete's oath, the hero course representative Izuku Midoriya. To be expected, though I'm curious to see what his speech may be. I don't know what to say. Moron. But I will say this. This sports festival is the beginning of our journey as heroes in the eyes of the world, so everyone do your best. Plus ultra. The crowd cheered. Well, it was simplistic, but understandable. They don't expect a kid to have any kind of experience motivating people, and my case was exceptional to the extreme. Still, the hype is there as they prepare to enter the first challenge. It was, just like with me, an eliminatory round to cut down from the 200+ students to a more manageable set. As midnight revealed the challenge, I couldn't help but grin. Obstacle course. A better matchup couldn't exist. As the horn blared the start of the challenge, Izuku was off in a streak of green light with Katsuki spouting insults hot on his heel. He managed to neatly dodge the ice that Todoroki used to stop the rest of the students by running up the wall and on the ceiling. Wow, look at this kid go. Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya easily takes the lead in style, yelled Mike. As I look around me, I couldn't help but overhear what all the others were saying. Looking at Izuku's bastardization of my lighting armor, it's easy to draw parallels between him and me. I could hear the media doing it too. God, I hate them. It's not just the quirk that makes the hero, but also how he uses it. Next up, Robot Inferno, yelled Mike. This was a relatively easy event as Izuku made himself look like a green ping pong ball as he jetted from one robot to the other, most often than not leaving heaps of scrap in his wake. He easily cleared the area and went ahead. Man, Eraser, what are you teaching them? Don't look at me like that, the problem child came that way. That's right. Let's not forget that Izuku Midoriya is the brother of none other than Madara Midoriya, the current head of Might Tower Agency and youngest pro hero ever, though let's also not forget the most important part. He's All Might's anointed heir and successor. Okay, where are you going with this, Mike? He's not the only talent in the class. Right behind him are Katsuki Bakugo and Shoto Todoroki, another heroic legacy as the son of the number 2 hero, Endeavor. I looked at the screen that was now following those two. Todoroki seemed to be highly annoyed, and his annoyance was somewhat visible in the vicious way he dealt with the robots. Katsuki was the same, though his rage was clearly visible as he seemingly used every curse word under the sun and then some, all the while violently tearing through the robots on his way to the next obstacle. Here comes, the next obstacle, the fall. Sure enough, there was a giant chasm with a few pillars sticking up from its depth. They were connected to each other by rope, and it seemed sturdy enough for even the heaviest person in the group to be able to cross. Izuku was, of course, the first to arrive. He didn't stop though and took a leap through the air, landing on the middlemost pillar. Another giant leap and he was on the other side, powering forwards. Man, this kid's unstoppable. Though it is to be expected, seeing as he has the blood of the symbol of strength in him. It's not just power on his side, but also skill. Even with all that power, if you don't channel it the right way, all you'll end up doing is destroying your surroundings. Just like his brother, he has impeccable control over his power. Damn, Eraser, I didn't think you had a soft spot. It's a rational observation. I snorted. Yeah, right. Aizawa's the biggest softy short of All Might. Hey, I just figured out something, since he's Madara's brother and Madara is All Might's heir, does that make him the Prince of Peace? What on earth are you talking about? I mean, look, All Might's the symbol of peace, Madara's the symbol of strength, so shouldn't Izuku be something like that? Maybe the symbol of hope. I looked at All Might. He seemed as stunned as me and the rest of the teachers, bar Nizu, who was smiling. Did you put him up to this? I asked the rat. I don't know what you're talking about, he replied. Yeah, right, I bet this was all done by your order. It seems that my disbelieving expression was noticed by Nizu. I did not tell Mike to put Izuku in the spotlight like this, but it was inevitable for someone to make the connection, said Nizu. But still, isn't it a bit early to call him that? Asked All Might. Not at all, after all, Madara was given a similar title at a much younger age. I swear that rat is smiling. All Might has a right to be worried. What Mike has done is elevate Izuku to the rank of a symbol. Izuku won't be allowed to show any sort of weakness after this. All Might, Izuku and me are now the 3 symbols of society. Should even one of us fall or falter, the whole system could collapse. Don't be like that, you moron. Izuku Midoriya hasn't done anything to earn him that title. But he can, can't he? After all, his brother was named the symbol of strength after finishing his sports festival and event early, so couldn't he do the same? Damn it, Mike. You had one fucking job and you ruined it. If Izuku doesn't finish first in all events, then he would have to work much harder for his place at the top and to earn the recognition befitting a symbol. Here we go again, folks. Midoriya has just reached the final obstacle, the minefield. Don't worry though, all these mines would do is spray you with paint when they explode. The green blur that was Izuku sped through the mines, without a care in the world, and the mines all exploded in a giant cloud of pink paint. Izuku won, obviously. Man, this kid's truly unstoppable. The winner of the first event, Izuku Midoriya. The little shit waved at the crowd. He wasn't even tired, though I suspect that Katsuki is more pisses at this than anyone, judging by the near mental breakdown he's having over there. // Meanwhile, in the arena, Izuku was having the time of his life. He'd heard what Present Mike had said and was determined to live up to their expectations. This is how I'm going to do it, Nii-san, All Might. I'm going to win this festival and prove myself worthy of your faith and power. Izuku looked towards the podium where Midnight was explaining the rules. He knew that the sports festival always had 3 stages. A first stage to weed out most of the students, then a cooperative stage, and finally a 1v1 tournament to decide the victor. If there's one thing that Izuku learned from his brother, it was that life wasn't fair. As such, he made sure to have contingencies in place to deal with almost all situations. After all, he did spend the better part of a month, before and after the USJ incident, learning the water walking technique and studying Fuinjutsu. As Midnight explained the event, Izuku couldn't help but touch the area on his right arm that was now covered with a forearm guard. Under that thin piece of fabric lay his greatest discovery and weapon. A storage seal, or the closest approximation of the concept that Izuku could reasonably create. He couldn't wait to see his brother's face when he saw what he had created. Unbeknownst to him, a maniacal grin stretched across Izuku's face, making him look then much more like his slightly deranged brother. Up in the stands, Madara saw this as well and gave a small smirk of his own, all the while powering his Sharingan for the fight ahead of him. // Izuku's planning something, and it's going to be great. I said in a sing-song voice, all the while looking down at the arena with a demented grin on my face. Should someone do something? Asked Snipe quietly in the back. No, it's all right. I think, replied All Might without much confidence. You should pay more attention to your successor's team, All Might. You'll see something very interesting about to happen, said Nizu as he drank some tea. Where the hell he took that tea from, I have no idea, so I'll just roll with it. He was right, though. Izuku's team was something else. Unlike everyone else from his class, his team was made up from a Gen Ed student, a support course student, and another from his class, the kid with the shadow, Tokoyami I think his name was. That's a most unusual lineup. I can see some reason as to what he would want the support course girl and Tokoyami, but the Gen Ed student? I shrugged. I believe that he chose them because they are friends, said Nizu. I raised an eyebrow. Friends? He didn't tell me he made friends. Tough to be fair, I haven't been home much since he started school, and all the time I did spend at home was mostly to sleep in a bed rather than my office couch. I said nothing as I continued to look down on the field. I saw the support girl give Izuku some unusual equipment that was imbued with chakra. Something's wrong, I said. This drew the attention of the pros. What do you mean? Asked All Might worriedly. The equipment the support girl is giving Izuku, is it allowed? I asked. Power Loader frowned. It is, I checked it myself. Hatsume is one of the rising stars in the support department. That gun is supposed to fire net cartridges to incapacitate the other students. Nothing too dangerous. I continued to look down, only half paying attention to Power Loader's explanation. Though my Sharingan, I could see the truth of the matter. I laughed. I couldn't stop myself. Young Madara, is something wrong? Asked All Might with concern. Oh, it's nothing, All Might. I'm just happy, that's all. Izuku's proven himself craftier than he looks, I said. Oh. Do enlighten us, said Nizu. I turned towards the rat and smirked. He knew what was going on. Heck, he probably even approved of it. Izuku's going to win, easily. That gun you see, they have been modifying it from the moment the team assembly timer first started. If I'm not mistaken, that's now a chakra rifle, I said. What? How could this happen? That weapon is dangerous, we can't allow that, exploded Power Loader as he got up, presumably to confiscate the weapon. You will do nothing, I stated, allowing my chakra to leak out and exert my presence over the seating area. Power Loader was stopped dead in his tracks. Madara is right. You will do nothing. They have not gone against the rules set for them by us, and a lot of the quirks that our students use are just as dangerous, if not more. Besides, I'm sure that weapon isn't as powerful as the one Madara uses, said Nizu. I retracted my presence and that allowed Power Loader to breathe again, though sweat could be seen coating his entire body. Nizu is correct. That rifle design is inefficient at best. All it'll do is number the area of the body where it hits and create a small explosion if it strikes the ground due to its kinetic energy. You have nothing to worry about, I said. The match started shortly afterwards. As expected, there was a big rush towards Izuku. What was not expected was the rifle in Izuku's hands to start barking out high-velocity emerald bolts of energy, forcing a majority of the teams to stay away. Some stray bolts even hit a couple of students and made one of the teams to break apart. In an unexpected turn of events, Izuku Midoriya keeps everyone away with a weapon created by Hatsune. Even so, it seems that there are some who are willing to brave the fire to get that headband. It was true. The teams led by Todoroki and Katsuki were closing in. Katsuki was relying on Kirishima's hardening to weather the storm, and Todoroki was using a mixture of his ice powers and Yorozu's creation quirk. Even so, Izuku's team was holding their own. If what Nizu said about them being friends was right, then they could have planned this, or at the very least planned to use Hatsume's equipment. That equipment seemed specially designed to give a high degree of mobility to whomever wore it. That was evidenced by the fact that Izuku took a jetpack flight away from his team and into the air. With my Sharingan, I could see the thin line of chakra that tied Izuku to a device on Hatsume's belt. It was ingenious, and really, I shouldn't have underestimated the amount of chakra Izuku has. Right now, I'd say that he has the same quantity as I did when I was 12, so I suppose that somewhere in the upper Chunin, but not quite Jonin. Still, he rationed what little chakra he had wonderfully. In a way, his control over chakra is even better than mine, though that may be because he had help from One for All and the nature energy within. With the horse and rider separated, Izuku's team had a greater range of options than what the others, even though possible. It didn't really matter if the horse changed configuration now that Izuku was relatively safe in the air. It came as a surprise to both the audience and the competitors when Izuku's teammates began attacking and stealing headbands. Would you look at that, Class 1A's Izuku Midoriya is reigning as the undisputed ruler of the field. I'd say it's pretty clear, folks, this kid is going places. I smirked. Oh, would you look at that, Katsuki is throwing a temper tantrum. Though I have to say that the choice to blast himself in the air came just in the nick of time, otherwise his headband might have been snatched away by some B-class reject. You're not dissing my class, are you? Asked Vlad with narrowed eyes. No, yes. He was still glaring at me, though I could feel Aizawa's condescending smirk from here. At any rate, the battle between Katsuki and Izuku became an aerial dogfight, with each combatant trying their level best to knock the other out of the sky. It came to a point where Izuku's gun was too damaged by the explosions it took to save its wielder, and Izuku had to toss it. Of course, he tossed the weapon at Katsuki, who, like a moron, caught the weapon and squeezed one last shot that damaged Izuku's jetpack. The gun promptly exploded in his hands and sent Katsuki crashing down to earth, that is if he wasn't snatched back by one of his teammates, who then proceeded to give Katsuki the few headbands that they had collected. Of course, the hothead set off in hot pursuit of Izuku, only to have his path blocked by a wall of ice. He screamed, as was ordinary for Katsuki when something doesn't go as planned. 2 minutes left. I looked at the leaderboard. Izuku's team was in first place, followed by Todoroki's, then Bakugo's and Tesutetsu. Todoroki had cornered Izuku with some ice and used Kaminari's electricity to try and take out their team, to no avail. Then something interesting happened. Todoroki's team was shot forward by Ida using some kind of overdrive technique, and Izuku's headband got stolen. Although Ida's overdrive seemed to make him motionless, or at the very least paralyzed for a short time. Izuku used this to his advantage as he closed the gap and charged up for a punch. For a fraction of a second, Todoroki's left arm burst into flames, but once Izuku sped past, they were quickly extinguished. The horn blared. That's the end, folks. First place and the headband with the 1,000,000 points goes to Team Midoriya. It seems that the king of this festival hasn't been dethroned yet. Second place, Team Todoroki. Third place, Team Bakugo, and finally fourth place, Team Tesutetsu. The 16 champions of this round will be advanced to the next, the one-on-one tournament to decide the winner of this sports festival. For the rest, we've prepared games that all are welcome to partake, even the ones that got to the next round. We'll be taking a break for now, but until then these are the matches. I looked at the screen and the matches went like this. Midoriya vs Denki Kaminari. Todoroki vs Shiro Hanta. Ashido vs Ibara Shiozaki. Shinso vs Yosetsu Aways. Hananuki vs Fumikichi Tokoyami. Mei vs Ida Tenya. Kirishima vs Tetsu. Katsuki vs Momo Yorizu. // I left the stands shortly after that announcement and went to find Izuku. On my way down, I met two unexpected people. All Might, Endeavor, I greeted calmly. The two top heroes turned towards me. Rikudou, I didn't expect to see you here, rumbled Endeavor. Oh. You think I wouldn't come and see my little brother's first sports festival? I shot back. Endeavor was visibly grinding his teeth at my reply. Now, let's not be hasty. This is a chance for all the young students of UA to shine, said All Might, attempting to defuse the situation. That's quite correct, All Might, I said as I began walking towards the stairs. As I passed by Endeavor, I said in a low tone that ensured only he could hear, be careful that you don't snap the leash. I continued down the stairs towards the cantina. I didn't look back to see what Endeavor's expression would be like, I already know his thoughts. Endeavor is not foolish enough to think that the Hero Commission doesn't know about his abusive behavior towards his family, and what saved his ass so far was his usefulness as a hero. Furthermore, the commission helped cover up the death of Toya Todoroki and his wife's mental breakdown. For these two crimes alone, Endeavor could lose his license and custody over Shoto, as well as a good portion of his wealth and all of his prestige. My words were a warning and a threat. Should he take a single step out of bounds, I can and will destroy him, and he know it. After some time, I found Izuku on a bench under a tree not too far from where the entrance to the student waiting rooms were. Izuku. I called out with a smile. He looked up at me, seemingly startled by my presence. What could have caused this? Due to Izuku's sage abilities, his sensory abilities are far beyond what mine could ever be. Oh, Enai-san, hi. Did you see me? Asked Izuku excitedly. I chuckled and ruffled his hair. Of course I did, symbol of hope, I said with a slight grin. Izuku blushed and beamed up at me. So, mind telling me why you're moping under this tree? Not that I disapprove or anything, it's quite the spot you've found, I asked. Instantly, Izuku lost his smile and his previous sullen mood returned. He was silent for a few moments. I didn't speak and just sat down next to him. If one was to see us, they would be surprised by the similarities between us, despite the fact that I was wearing battle armor and Izuku a simple sport get-up. Nisan. What would you do if you see someone suffering and don't know how to help them? Asked Izuku. Ah, I see, the Todoroki problem has reared its head. Well, I would go and seek advice, kind of like you just did. But I think I know who you're talking about, I said. Izuku's head snapped towards me and his eyes went wide. I could almost see his inner thoughts and turmoil. But began Izuku. Tell me, what do you think of this festival? I asked abruptly. He blinked. It's important for our careers, said Izuku, but his tone betrayed his uncertainty. From one point of view, that's true. My journey as the symbol of strength began here, and yours will too. When people ask where did the symbol of hope begin, most will point out this day as the origin of your legend. However, there's another facet to this great sham, as I like to call it, I said in a humorous tone as I tuned my hard eyes onto Izuku and looked straight into his, dark green boring into light green. It's here, at this sport festival, where careers are bought and sold, made and unmade, all the while the masses look on in awe, and from this awe the media companies and the Hero Commission forge the image of the pure, just and exceptional heroes that has been shoved down your and every other child's throat since they could understand what a hero was. Izuku was silent, struggling to come to grips with what I've said. Now tell me this, Izuku. What would happen if suddenly the world lost All Might? Endeavor would step up as the #1 hero, at least until I take his place. Sure, there will be some turmoil and villains would spike in activity, but it would be a rather smooth transition of power. The image of the unbeatable heroes isn't really broken. The world would eventually forget about All Might and move on. Now think what will happen if Endeavor's acts of abuse against his family were to come out. The world will lose its trust in heroes, said Izuku. I nodded gravely. But it's not right. Can't the Hero Commission do anything? Asked Izuku in a fit of sudden anger. I raised an eyebrow. The Hero Commission helped cover Endeavor's tracks, I explained. Izuku recoiled as if struck. What? I sighed. They provided the contacts that ensure Endeavor was able to make Rei's family give her up to him. They provided the doctors that checked on and delivered all 4 children of the Todoroki family, of which Shoto is the youngest. They provided the specialist expertise to Endeavor so that he could mold Shoto into the next All Might, and finally they covered up the death of Endeavor's fist-born son, Toya Todoroki. Izuku looked sick. How? How could they have done that? Aren't they supposed to be the good guys? I snorted, they're bureaucrats. All they care about is to maintain the status quo. The only reason why I don't have their leash on my neck is because they know that nothing could stop me if I turn to villainy. Not only that, but I also have extensive connections with many large corporations that make huge profits from the technology one sell them. If I wanted to, I could make support gear that much more expensive nationwide, and it doesn't stop there. Japan's overpopulated with heroes and most of them aren't of the best quality. Fact of the matter is that most heroes aspirants with so-called villainous quirks that could be truly useful in the field, much like your friend from the general course, often find better offers abroad. Now imagine the hit to Japan's reputation if I suddenly leave for America or England. All it will take is a couple of interviews and suddenly all the heroes in Japan will have their reputation smeared, and then they can do one of two things. They either remain on the sinking ship, or they leave in disgust, bringing even more shame down on Japan. Do you see now just how much power words have? How easily I could ruin an entire county by just a few words. Izuku was silent. I couldn't blame him. All his life, heroes have been larger-than-life figures. The mere idea that something could send this house of cards come crashing down was horrifying. Why didn't they stop Endeavor before he did this? Asked Izuku. By the time Endeavor decided to put this plan into motion, he was already the number 2 pro hero, second only to All Might and one of the world's most powerful heroes. How difficult would you think it would have been for him to do all he has done without the Commission's aid? I'll tell you, not very. All the Commission has done is help streamline the process and ensure that this doesn't turn into a scandal of epic proportions. Furthermore, what could they have done? Sick All Might on him. To convict Endeavor, one would need solid proof of his deeds, and by that time, Endeavor had amassed enough money and influence that the government wouldn't dare go against one of their hardest working and most successful heroes, I said. So, it all boils down to politics in the end, doesn't it? Asked Izuku in a depressed tone. This is how it's always been and how it always will be. All that anyone can do is try and fix what they can and entrust the rest to the next generation, I said. We sat like this for a few moments until Izuku got up. I have to go and think. Thanks, Enai-san, said Izuku. One more thing, I said, causing Izuku to look back, you have to win this, no matter what. The world's had its eyes on you, you who embody the best in us and the hope for a better tomorrow. You can't let that flame die out, not for me and not for anyone. Do you understand, Izuku? Yeah, I do, said Izuku as he walked away. I watched him go. Honestly, it looked like he was carrying the entire world on his shoulders. I didn't want to do this, but it's better than to let Izuku go out unprepared. Only time will tell if I made the right choice. A/N, chapter done. Sorry for the wait. Anyways, this was the first part of the sports festival. Originally I wanted to do it all in one chapter, but then I realized that I was already pushing 5k words and I didn't want to make the next chapter bland. Now, question time. I've recently come across a FIC of the same genre as this one about a hidden society of chakra users, and that got me thinking. What would happen if such a society did indeed exist? Would it be like the MLA, manga spoilers or different? Considering the power discrepancy between the run-of-the-mill hero and the shinobi, I'd say that, should a society like this exist, it would have a pretty big impact. The following is a preview of how a story like this would look like. Not all men are created equal. This he knew since he was little more than a 4-year-old boy, when society threw him to the side because he wasn't special. Little did they know of just how special he was. In this world of superpowers, there is one that stands above all others. It's a mystical energy that connects its users together and grants them abilities beyond what any normal person could conceive. The users of this power called it Chakra. They are the forgotten relics of a humanity that deemed them old and outdated. Little did they know of the hidden potential within these special individuals, for you see, while 80% of the world today has a quirk, they can't truly pass on their knowledge and power to the next generation, not unlike Chakra users can. And as quirkless people become ever rarer, their Chakra becomes ever more powerful. This is the story of Izuku Midoriya and his journey to become the greatest legend of the world. If you like this content, don't forget to like and subscribe. See you later, bye bye.